And we do have the privilege of being joined right now by Dr. Rick Nabby, he's the director of the National Hurricane Center, giving a little more insight into what we can expect and how they're tracking Hurricane Matthew.
Could you start by talking to us a little bit about how you're actually getting these details to us and in what time frame? What do you know right now?
Well, we have a lot of different data sources, including Hurricane Hunter aircraft from the U.S. Air Force currently investigating Matthew, and that's feeding into our forecast process that will result in our 11 a.m. advisory. We're also now seeing the eye of the hurricane coming into the Miami radar depiction. So lots of data to help us put out the best forecast we possibly can, looking at the models to update the track and intensity forecast. And with this eye coming into view here, at some point we will start providing updates more frequently because we'll have a better beat on the center on a continuous basis. But bottom line, the weather's going to go downhill after lunch. It's already starting to get a little rainy at times, but that'll get more frequent. There'll be stronger winds associated with those. So after lunch, it's a good day to be inside, off the roads, to deal with the water and the wind hazards and stay safe.
And again, thank you for joining us, Mr. Nab. We have a question to ask you, though, about when the path of the hurricane, if it does in fact make landfall, how will that change the path? How will that change how it's strengthened and moves forward?
Okay, well, we don't know for sure when or where or even if the center of the hurricane will make landfall in southeast Florida or any other part of Florida for that matter. But the potential is there for the core of the major hurricane, perhaps as a Category 4 hurricane, to come on shore. But even if the system center stays just offshore, you could still easily get damaging hurricane conditions on land, and the strong winds penetrating some distance inland. That's why, folks, if you're in mobile homes and you've got instructions from your local officials telling you you ought to get out of those mobile homes, now's the time to go find your safe place to be during the storm. And nobody should be counting on, well, if the center just stays a little bit offshore, that takes us off the hook and we'll be fine. That's not the case at all. It's not just a point on the map. And the closer it gets, the worse it is, farther inland for both wind and water. But it's not just going to be coastal. It's going to be inland too. It's not just going to be wind, it's going to be water, inland flooding from heavy rains.
We have been talking so much about the eye of this storm and exactly what that means if it were to go slightly west or slightly east. Can you help to paint a picture, especially for those who have never been through something like this before, of exactly what is happening with that eye?
Yes, and it's again worth pointing out, and again looking at the radar depiction draws this point pretty clearly. The hurricane is not just the center and not just the eye. The eye wall right around the eye is where the strongest winds are, and that would be where you'd find the maximum sustained winds that you see in our advisories. But the hurricane force winds extend outward from there. Tropical storm force winds extend outward from there even farther. And then you have all of these rain bands, and the hurricane, because of its strength and size, is able to push the ocean around, and that's why you're going to have the storm surge hazard from Palm Beach County northward, and why the Bahamas are experiencing so much storm surge. But look at all this rain that's coming. If this stays offshore, all this rain is still going to be onshore. Heavy rain, inland flooding is a deadly hazard if you get on the roads.
And Dr. Nab, one more question, and there's a lot of people that are going through a hurricane for the first time here, maybe even some people that have been through a couple. What does it take to shift a little bit west? What has to happen? I know sometimes it's hard to project, but is there anything that you can predict that maybe would change that course a little bit?
Well, again, we can't pinpoint exactly where the center is going to be overnight tonight and exactly where it will be relative to the coastline or where landfall would exactly occur. But major hurricanes especially tend to wobble along a general northwestward path in this particular case. So don't read too much into a little bend to the left, a little bend to the right. But we can't get that specific this many hours in advance exactly where the center is going to be. But we can tell you, based on where the hurricane warnings are and where there are flash flood watches and where there are evacuation instructions for storm surge, where the potential is. And that's what we ought to be focusing on. And that's why we keep saying, regardless of the exact track of the center, the hazards, both water and wind, both coastal and inland, are going to be in play. And we need to get off the roads and into our safe places for the duration of the storm after early afternoon today.
All right, that is Dr. Rick Knabb with the National Hurricane Center. I know you're very busy, and we want to thank you very much for taking time out so we can get our folks prepared here in our slice of South Florida, Doctor.
We do appreciate it.